We are finished with federal laws and court cases, and now we're going to cover New York State law. Here is a photo of the governor celebrating a new state law. New York State law is maintained by New York State Division of Human Rights, and this is a photo of the division that comes from their website. Now, please don't feel that I'm throwing a whole bunch of new laws at you, because this is going to be a lot easier to remember than the federal law that we discussed earlier. Because, see, you don't have to remember any dates or names of the laws. The only thing you have to remember for New York State is what groups are protected. Now, I have a picture here. It says New York State Executive Law, Article 15. That's what's known as the Human Rights Law. New York State protects all the same groups as the federal government. But then, down below, on the lower right, is the important information you need to know. These are the groups that New York State has added to protected classes. So I have them pretty much here roughly in chronological order. And it starts with age, marital status, sexual orientation. Those are the oldie goldies. And then more recently, within the last 10 or 20 years, we have domestic violence victim, lawful source of income, military status, and gender identity or expression. In the next few pages, I'll elaborate on these. Once again, we have our running list of laws, and at the top we have federal laws, at the bottom we have New York State law. And so you can see that you really only have two laws to remember, and the protected groups are on the right. I think age, marital status, and sexual orientation are pretty clear in what is meant. But what exactly is meant by domestic violence victim? Now, New York State law protects victims of domestic violence. In general, a landlord can evict a tenant who commits domestic violence, but not a tenant who is a victim. Also, a landlord cannot enforce a lease if a tenant moves out to escape violence. Here, I have provided you with details on this particular protection for domestic violence victims. We don't need to go through it word for word. I'm just providing this for your reference. Now, what is meant by lawful source of income? How do you protect that? In 2019, New York State passed Lawful Source of Income Non-Discrimination Act. This law prevents anyone from being refused sale or lease of a home because of where they get their money from, which is what we mean by source of income. Examples of legal sources of income that used to be rejected by landlords and sellers before the law took effect. These examples include people getting their funds from child support, alimony, foster care subsidies, Social Security, public assistance, or subsidized housing such as Section 8. Remember, we said lawful source of income, so we're not talking about people who get their income from some kind of criminal activity. Now, here's an important question. Let's say I want to rent an apartment in Trump Tower on 5th Avenue in Manhattan for $10,000 a month. I have a job, but I don't have enough money for the rent. Can the building refuse me an apartment? Of course they can. My goodness, of course they can. But you would be amazed how many students get this wrong. You would be amazed how many students say, no, they have to take you. Well, if that's true, I'll move in today, right? Anyway, lawful source of income still means you need enough money. It just doesn't matter where it comes from. The next one that might need a little bit of explanation is the law protecting people based on military service. Now, the New York State law is based on a federal law called the Service Members Civil Relief Act, which protects military persons from foreclosure or eviction and offers lease termination options if necessary. I've given you vast details below which you are welcome to read, but you're not required to memorize this information for your licensing test. And the last protected group that we need to know about are affected by the new law called GENDA. GENDA is an acronym for Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act. It prohibits discrimination based on gender identity or expression and adds transgender New Yorkers to those protected by the state hate crimes law. Just as an aside, this is a photo I took myself of New York City. This is a brochure that I obtained from New York State Division of Human Rights. It's a guide to how to file a complaint if necessary. And it's very explicit. It gives phone numbers and website addresses and everything. And it also gives some examples of things that might be actionable.